cut David up, please, on screen. This is Spike in studio, Southdown studio to David. Do you hear me, David?
I do, yep.
Excellent. Welcome to the show. Sorry it's a little late, and welcome all of the guests. We have here a full panel in Glasgow, who we'll be able to cut to very shortly. And also Jessica is joining us remotely, I think, quite soon too. So you are the moderator for this event. We're going to hand over control to you shortly, and then we'll let you steer the event from there on in. We've got 1 hour, 2 minutes of session time, and you're the man up front. So I'm going to pass over to you now. Have a great session.
Sure, thanks a lot, everyone. Welcome, and sorry for the slight delay. So I'll just jump right in. It's a crazy 2 weeks, and I think exciting and encouraging, and I think we've all got work to do ahead of us. So let's get to it. So welcome to this side event, Accelerating Climate Action Through the Circular Economy, a holistic approach to the long-term global goals. It's an exciting discussion to have on the day of finance. And coming on the coattails of some of the larger corporate commitments, because circular economy is implicitly a public-private collaboration. It requires both sides to actively work and really work in lockstep. So first, thanks to the organizers, the government of Côte d'Ivoire, the co-organizers, our French partners, the Association Française des Entrepreneurs pour l'Environnement, and in cooperation with UNIDO. These are all great partners who come together through different collaborations like the Global Alliance for the Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency, GACERI, the African Circular Economy Alliance, and others. So we're going to have a pretty straightforward agenda today. We're going to start with a welcome and keynote address, just very quickly to set the scene, a panel discussion with some guiding questions, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussions as much as possible. And also the session will be shared, is live streaming on YouTube. So first, I'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Minister Lenore Gewessler from Austria, who is also the co-chair for the global consultations on the circular economy this year. Welcome, please. To our coordinator, this is to switch to the video from the minister.
Hello, David. This is Spike in Glasgow. We don't have any videos here in our system for any throw, but we do have a panel here. So if you're throwing to any individuals on stage, do let us know by addressing their names, and then we can cut them up onto the picture and sound. No video, no content here in Glasgow, but we've got a lovely panel here for you.
Excellent, thanks. So I'll share some of the remarks that the minister from Austria was sharing to really set the scene here on what we're talking about. We're in a state of the world where we have approximately 100 billion tons of resources entering the economy every year, everything from metals, minerals, fossil fuels, to organic materials from plants and animals. And just 8.6% of that material is recycled or used again. And the use of resources has tripled since 1970 and could double again by 2050 under a business as usual situation. And currently, with our current levels of consumption, we're already on target to consume 1.5 Earths. So obviously, this is not sustainable. And this rampant consumption has devastating effects on the climate, but also on human welfare, wildlife, and the planet more broadly. And so we have now what's before us a need for an urgent shift from a model that looks at what we call in the circular economy world a linear model, a use it up and throw it away approach, to one that is circular, where we follow kind of 4 basic principles. Always add the 4th. Reject is the first. Let's change our needs and our demands on what we think a good, healthy lifestyle looks like. The second is where waste and pollution are designed out. The third is where products and materials are kept in use for as long as possible at the highest value possible. And then when they've served that initial purpose, they are either brought back into the system or used to help regenerate nature. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about the circular economy. And so the circular economy is not just about fixing environmental wrongs, although that is one of the reasons that brings us here today. Evidence shows it can bring big opportunities and positive impacts across industry, sectors, and lives. And just to highlight a little bit on climate in the context that we're in, about 45% of global greenhouse gas emissions are from product use and manufacturing, including food production. Circular economy strategies address about 39% of that 45%. That's the way to say it. So 20% overall emissions can be addressed through circularity. And let me just give one tangible example so we can start off with action in mind. Shifting towards recycled materials could alleviate the need to produce virgin plastics and synthetic fibers for textiles, and then, of course, significantly reduce the associated fossil fuels and emissions. So changing consumption patterns here is crucial. So if the average number of times that we wear a garment doubled, greenhouse gas emissions from the textile industry would be lower by 44%. That's a simple example. In textiles, just double the amount of time that we wear our clothes will reduce emissions by 44%. So with that, I don't want to take up too much time setting the scene here, and I would like to welcome our host, Mr. Abdullah Maqsit from the IPCC, to share the updates on the reports that they've recently pulling together, and really ask, the IPCC 6th assessment report, set a turning point in our fight against climate change. Can you briefly outline for us the key findings of the report and its scenarios?
Thank you very much for inviting us, IPCC, to this excellent event. Our report, last report of IPCC was approved last summer, and it is the contribution for the working group 1 of IPCC in charge for science. I mean science because we have other group that we will they will release their report later. But the main key messages from this report is that now we know well how climate in Earth system is working more than ever. We know exactly how all the components of climate system are there. We have the best research. We know better than ever how the climate has changed in the past, how it is changing now, and how it will change in the future. And the main also key element is that we know that in the past decade, we detected that there is a global warming. But what the report highlights that we broke many records in global warming during last decade. And decade after decade, we have, we are breaking this record. Something which is really also important, and this is specific for this report, is that the extreme events are, interesting all the region on the world. There is no part in the world which is, let's say, far from this extreme event. But also about extreme, we did have extreme events in the past, but the countries did have the capacity to adapt. But now the extreme events we are experiencing are coming with such frequency and such intensity that even developed countries are not able to adapt to those. And I think, and we did have a new also element of this extreme event like fires. Fires in California with many deaths. And this is some critical problem. The other also element for the key results is that while it is still open, the window is still there to be between this 1.5 degrees C and also 2 degrees C. I mean, the Paris Agreement, condition. But if you are not taking immediate, unprecedented action to limit the greenhouse gas emission, we will, we can be a little bit far on this track. The last thing I want to say also is that it is a time to take all the necessary action to try to put all the climate system in good track, because what is, if you are not doing anything, it will be something from decision maker, stakeholder, individual. It will be like saying that people are not taking care of this earth. It is no assistance of earth and generation in danger. Because now, if in the past we did have the pretext to say we don't know, so we cannot act. Now we know IPCC provide the voice of science about climate change. And this make all the decision makers responsible. So it is clear for them. And IPCC is maintaining and undertaking a huge program of outreach. We are touching all around the world and to adapt all our information to any decision maker. At the limit, we are providing all our reports with key messages in a sort of flyer, like an accordion, at size of card visit. But each report, you have the key messages to be used by a decision maker. Why? Because if I am prime minister, head of state, I have here the key messages to take action. Why? Because I know that it is coming from the assessment for thousands of peer-reviewed literature. It is coming after also, it is coming from after considering 80,000 comments between scientists and government. Because the message coming from IPCC, they are coming from the best interface between science and policy. We are providing this information now in this sixth cycle, the most intense in history of IPCC, with 8 reports. We are providing this information like a toolbox where each policymaker, stakeholder, academia, civil society, minorities, students, children can take the exact information which is adapted to their level of understanding and also the level of their capacity to take action. Its action matters, and this is what we are looking, and this is how IPCC is trying to bring the voice of science and to make it help in decision making through a large toolbox. This is, I can stop for the moment.
Yeah, Abdallah, I think the recent report certainly did that. It certainly elevated the discussion and helped create additional momentum for us. I'm interested to hear from you, whether it's in the report or just your personal experience as you're listening to so many leaders around the world, how the circular economy is starting to feature in these discussions, because we put a lot of attention and we need more action on the supply side and the production side of emissions, but that the demand side is really where we're talking with circular economy.
Thank you for this question. That I want to highlight that IPCC is assessing research. I think, and also we are assessing the research related to the report that were approved by these 195 countries. And of course, for a circular economy, we didn't have some key messages from this last report, because it is coming from the physical basis. It is about scientific physical basis. But we will approve our report for Working Group 2 dealing with impact and vulnerability in next February. And we will also approve our report for solution and mitigation in March next year for Working Group 3. But however, I think, as I said, our assessment, success assessment is solution-oriented. And now I can also put my hat as a former, citizen from Morocco when I was member of the National Council Socio-Economic and Environment Council, and I dealt with circular economy. I think in putting circular economy in the context, in this context, is really a very, very strategic consideration. Why? Because when we are dealing with climate change, we are dealing with two components. The first one, it is dealing with security, and second one is for creating wealth, improving well-being. There are two kind of axes we are using. So when it is about dealing with security, we should really, climate change is here to inform. What is provided by IPCC report is provide enough information, increase the knowledge to allow the transition from what we called in the past crisis management. Crisis management is a kind of concept when everything is there and we can do nothing. And I think this is in the past. And then we transformed the crisis management to risk management. We are just by changing crisis to risk, that means we are looking for some time to anticipate. Now, with the extreme event, the rhythm, accelerated rhythm of extreme event, as it is now, and also what is projected in the future by our report, I think capacity to manage even the risk will be a little bit problematic. This is why we should migrate for a new concept, which is knowledge risk management. We are adding knowledge just to provide enough time to take action, to provide enough time to have the possibility to plan, to have enough time to implement any strategy for implementation. This is for managing the risk. But let's turn, and this is what I am calling for circular economy, about how we can improve the well-being. Circular economy is connected to energy. Circular economy is connected to waste. And I think what is now, it is really important, and this is mainly the advice I can provide, is through circular economy, it is the track that can ensure not only tackling climate change, but also transforming the climate change in sort of climate change. And I think we should take opportunity. And this is what we are looking now for many developing countries, is the one we subscribe to a circular economy. It is the willingness to create a world with less waste, with the energy that is really implemented, that is really, clean, and that also thinks about how we can make this circulation as easy as possible. But coming back to the best experience, I can say, and mainly in developing country, it is not about to adopt, to take this concept circular economy and just to say we are implementing. No, we should live with circular economy. It is circular economy, it is not something it is project. It is something that should be sustained. Circular economy should be introduced in any scheme of planification, because the circular economy starts by using the resources, producing, and the waste should be enter in the other. And this circularity should be well managed and well explained, because at the end, the simple user are citizens. And if the citizens are not aware about the process of circular economy, they cannot adhere to this circular economy. This is why. The last thing I want to say also is, and this is also connected to climate change. And this is why you can connect the climate change to circular economy. It is also a new concept. You should think about what is a sort of climate change business plan. Because developed countries are interested to manage climate change, but they should keep a level of economy which is really enough interesting for their, their rank. And this is, I think, the one which selected circular economy and the blue economy and other kind of economy are the one that took this concept, the economic model in all the climate change business model that can include reducing the emission as well as investing in renewable energy, as well as also, and this is new also, we should also pay attention how to improve the perception of the citizens about climate change, to adhere not only to tackle climate change, but also to be an element, an actor in circular economy. And this is, I think, the way we can ensure that the circular economy can be used in creating jobs, new jobs, creating wealth, but in the same time, it is improving the quality of for cities and urban cities and even any piece in those countries. And in the same time, they are tackling climate change. This is, I think, the good approach for my point of view that can be undertaken. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you're hitting on a lot of important points, including that circular economy is an approach, it's a lens, but it's also a narrative that can activate and mobilize communities. It can create political space for bolder action, but also it's got practical, tangible tools that need to be implemented. So I think one area to really look at, and it'd be great to dive in as we move to our next panelist, is on national level action. We're seeing coming into the COP, at least 70 countries have included circular economy in their NDCs that they've submitted. This is a wild uptick, but the approaches are a mix. It's a mix of waste management, economic policy, sometimes looking at hard to abate sectors. They're really different approaches. Some are kind of industry approaches, but it's a real mix right now on how that circular economy is being incorporated. We're also seeing a big increase in requests for technical assistance, both through UN agencies and partners like the NDC Partnership and others, for countries who want support and to help figure out what circular economy means for them and what types of policies they could or should have in place. So with that background, I'd like to turn to Gustave Abua, the Director General from Côte d'Ivoire, who's also our host today, to share, what does this mean in your country and the countries that you're engaging with?
Thank you. I want to thank the organizer of this session. I just want to say that in Côte d'Ivoire, circular economy is not just a concept, it's not just a word, but it's a real tool for climate adaptation and climate mitigation. The president of the Côte d'Ivoire and the government, based on the finding of IPCC, consider the circular economy like a tool to promote economy, to promote green job, also to have a cleaner city, cleaner country in Côte d'Ivoire. So circular economy, we actually have a new legislation based on circular economy promotion. Also, we create some fiscality to give people, the means to change paradigm, to change mindset. So we are in Côte d'Ivoire. We are promoting circular economy to help people to change the way they have to the business as usual. But you consider right now circular economy as a key component of the sustainable development strategy in Côte d'Ivoire. So this is not just a word, but we have the president who is a good model. We want to be a model for sustainable development promotion. So we are all engaged, the parliament people, the senator. So everybody is aware of the relevance of circular economy. So at this stage, I want to say we want to be the regional actor for circular economy promotion in Africa.
If I can ask one follow-up question, I know you're a part of the African Circular Economy Alliance that's hosted with the AFDB, and we're a partner with as well, certainly. Through that coalition, and you want to lead in West Africa in your region, what's an area that people need to be looking to you for? What's something you're doing well, or that should be replicated, or something you want to do better where you want somebody to come alongside and maybe you need some cross-border help?
We realize that waste in Côte d'Ivoire, even the Côte d'Ivoire is not a great polluter, but we suffer a lot from climate change. So we consider waste as one sector in the national determined contribution to we use waste sector, like, we have a lot of waste in plastic, a lot of waste in agriculture, a lot of waste in, in transport. So we just want people to change mindset. We help people to consider waste not like just waste, but like raw material to improve, the condition of life and to have a wealthy state in Côte d'Ivoire. So what we are doing now is develop legislation and put in place some, curricula in university, in the school, to make students aware about the relevance of circular economy, or the relevance of taking into account waste, not like just waste, but like raw material to improve economy, to protect environment, and also to change, to combat poverty in Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. If we can drive across a continent, then fly across an ocean, it'd be great to hear from Shikha Bhasin, who's joining us from CEEW in India. You're sitting in a think tank in India. What's happening there? How is circularity prioritized for you, and how do you see it being? What's creating the momentum in India and in your work for this agenda?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me here. I think we look at what's happened in this past 1 week, right? The world is finally committing to certain targets that will ensure that what we have within the Paris Agreement is actually a realistic target going forward, right? And many, many thanks to our colleagues at IPCC for putting that sort of pressure. And if you start looking at what a lot of those targets are actually talking about, it's insane amounts of aggressive renewable energy targets, right? There's clean technology is going to be what's going to get us, to staying well below 2 degrees Celsius. And that will require a significant ramp up in the kind of production facilities we have and the kind of manufacturing capabilities that we need to invest in. And fortunately or unfortunately, clean technology sectors depend significantly on critical minerals. So within the wind sector for electric mobility, you rely on rare earth minerals. For battery storage, you require significant amounts of minerals. Again, the supply of which is heavily skewed. So one is the increased demand on these minerals is going to have to play and solve for meeting these targets. The second is the limited nature of them will require for us to really think about the utilization of minerals in a very circular approach. And it has many benefits. First and foremost, it is, of course, far less emissions intensive, energy intensive. It's environmentally benign to recycle, these minerals from the waste that's being generated. Secondly, it has massive economic implications because you're not importing tons and tons and tons of these minerals into the economies where this production and supply will happen. one. And then finally, it's going to create an entire other business opportunity, to realize, what this market could look like and how different players can be a part of it. And I think on each of these things, if I can give you an example for India, right? IRENA has estimated that for the existing solar capacity that we have built in India today, it's 325,000, in terms of the waste that is being generated. What are you going to do with this waste? There's a massive opportunity to be able to recycle the minerals out of it, which very quickly leads to how much are we spending on importing, these minerals. So for 2019, the figure is, again, I think it's $325 million was spent on importing minerals, across different clean technology sectors in India. And 44% of this could have been saved if we had recycled the clean technology that's sort of reaching its end of life. And if we think about it from a market opportunity point of view, there is market research out there that suggests that by 2030, this could be worth $1 billion just in terms of recycling batteries, not even looking at other aspects of, critical components that are part of clean technology sectors. So I think for countries like India, which now have a very clear target ahead of them in terms of where they want to go, in this fight against climate change. And a country like India that really needs jobs, it needs industrial competitiveness, it needs energy efficiency, energy security. This is a very unique opportunity for us to be able to get there if we actually start thinking about it from a circular economy approach from the get-go.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we're hearing a common theme here, that there's this mix of, there's definitely impact needs that direct us to circular economy. There's policy needs, citizen needs on waste, but there's also business opportunity and business momentum. And, who better to have with us than Jessica Long, who literally wrote the book on this topic. Jessica, you're here on a great day. It's Finance Day, as I mentioned earlier. And a lot of times we turn towards multilateral climate funds, local government resources, tax resources. We've got a lot of things to fund: mitigation, adaptation, reforestation, defunding deforestation, and everything else. So, but we've got big momentum. We've got a new SBT, a science-based target that's been launched for finance. We've got this new coalition of 450 finance institutions coming together, looking at climate. It'd be great to hear from you where you see circularity at now from your perspective, either before or where you're sitting really now at Closed Loop Partners.
Great, thank you so much, David, and thank you to all of the hosts for inviting me to come speak today and to join this event. I'm very excited, as you mentioned, David, to see a circular economy on the climate change agenda. As you mentioned earlier, about 55% of our climate targets can be met or achieved via a focus on a transition to renewable energy, which means the rest, like 45, 50% or so, needs to be tackled through the stuff we consume every day. So all of our production and consumption systems. From a climate finance perspective, I think a couple of things. One is, I think we can all agree that climate finance is critical to the broader climate transition. I think we can also all agree that the commitment made 12 years ago of $100 billion by 2020 to emerging markets and developing countries was probably at the time considered quite meaningful and a huge commitment and a huge sign of progress. I think while there are debates around how you add up those numbers, I think we can all probably agree that it's not enough. And that we are far off target from that $100 billion, especially for the most vulnerable communities and the most vulnerable populations across the globe. What's important to remember from a financing perspective from my side is $100 billion was always meant to be the floor, not the ceiling in terms of commitments, especially towards emerging markets and developing countries. We need trillions of dollars to really aid that transition from where we are today to where we need to be to meet the targets set out in the Paris Agreement. I think as we look towards finance and bringing up more money for this climate transition, we also need to ensure that we are appropriately balancing monies that are going toward mitigation and adaptations. Probably a lot more, for example, needs to be on the adaptation side, which honestly is challenging, right? That typically is more grant money, not loans or not opportunities that have a clear business case behind them. I think we also need more private finance, so I'm quite excited by some of the commitments and obligations that we're hearing this week from large private institutions around more money into this sector. And then finally, I'll just say to what my fellow panelists have been talking about here, what gets really exciting is circular economy, right? Because circular economy is one amazing way to not just guide us toward our climate goals and tackling the 45% of the rest of the emissions. It's also a way to help finance a lot of these projects, right? The circular economy could open up trillions of dollars. We've estimated $4.5 trillion by 2030, just by switching from our linear ways of production to circular ways of production. Tons of examples that I think folks have already given, whether it be minerals and mining, textiles that was mentioned, food waste, which is a massive area of opportunity, construction, and more. So quite excited about the opportunities in this space.
And I think thanks for those points. When we were last together physically in Davos, you and your colleagues and kind of our partners, a lot of whom are here with us, were talking about that in circular action there's a decade of ideation and piloting, and now we're kind of moving towards scale and mass adoption. So there's really a call for a different type of action than there was even 2 or 3 years ago. And I think there's a lot more clarity of what those priority actions should be. And to that point, you could see this through our work at PACE and this coalition of CEOs and ministers, but also through the global consultation that happened that UNIDO helped facilitate with Côte d'Ivoire and Austria and others, that a couple of key priorities kind of at broad swaths to be taken, looking at clear and coherent guidelines, adjusting investment strategies to embed circular approaches like we heard from the Director General from Côte d'Ivoire mentioning, supporting SMEs. This has kind of started in different places, and technologies come about, and we haven't really fully leveraged how technology can help transition from a linear to a circular economic model. Looking at behavior change and lifestyles, which is a lot of work. That takes years of work and really shifting our mindsets. Think how long it took us all to start wearing seatbelts. How long is it going to get us to start thinking about lifestyles within planetary boundaries? And then this idea of public-private partnerships, including public-private partnerships that leverage different types of funding or innovative financing. And so, we've heard kind of that government level, and it'd be really, and Jessica, who's got this real mix experience, really looking at a high level, but also working with specific companies and investors. We have with us also Pierre-Yves Poulican from Suez, who's got very tangible experience leading on this agenda for over a decade. So it'd be great to hear from you. How's this resonating with you? What are you hearing this week? And what are you all doing that's aligned to this climate agenda and circularity?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting Suez at this panel. I will say that circular economy is part of our DNA for more than a decade, as you mentioned. It's even now written in our purpose. So, and I will say it's a new business model we try to build. Why circular economy? I will say first, because as mentioned by the other member of the panel, it's the best way to reach our target of 1.5 trajectory. So for any company looking at circular economy, it's a way to put reality on the world of 1.5. I think it's very important to share that. Of course, we need the regulation, but for a company, it's important to look where are we coming from and where we want to go. The second thing, I do believe that, as mentioned by Shekhar, we have in front of us the limit of the resources. IPCC mentions the urgency for carbon question. We all know that, especially here in Glasgow. But the next frontier, the next challenge will be the limit of the resources on lithium, cobalt, and we know that we have 20 years span in front of us, and it's got to be a huge challenge. And that's why, for example, for the battery, the UE is already putting some regulation for obliging recycling of battery to have a minimum of recycled lithium inside the new battery. I think it's very important that step by step, this regulation increase the level of compulsory recycling materials. It has been one of the things we've been suffering for years on plastic, because we were comparing virgin polymer against recycling plastic. And once the whole price was very low, you couldn't sell anymore your recycled plastic. Now it's part of the regulation, and I think that B2C company understands that they need to put recycling plastic inside their bottle, because otherwise the consumer will make the choice themselves. So I think it's very important to help a company to understand how to fix that. One tool maybe to look at Ellen MacArthur works, Circulatics tools. It's a way to assess your circularity inside the company and where you can progress. At Suez, we did make this assessment, and we have a very good mark as well, but we also point out some of the point of progress we could implement inside Suez company, even if we have 4 million tons of recycling materials. If we are used to valorize our sludge to energy in Egypt, in France, we convert methane inside the network. So yes, we have this in our DNA, but even if we look with some NGO like Ellen MacArthur, we have a very strong stakeholder here, which is challenging the private company. And of course, being challenging is quite helpful as well to progress on this matter. So I would definitely recommend a private company to do that. There will be ISO 59004, which will be finalized, I would say, next year. We have the honor to be at Suez through our expert, Catherine Chevauché, the chairman, the co-chair of this ISO committee. It will be very useful as well for companies to look at this ISO, because it's part of our DNA as a private company. And at the end, I will say, look at what are the raw materials you are using, and as mentioned, what are the waste you are producing. And if you look at both sides of the flow, I will say you will have ideas, you will challenge your supplier, you will challenge your customer, you will deliver a new solution. So I think it's very important to have a new way of looking at the flow, the in and the out, to bring methodology, to bring experts like Circulatics in part of your transformation, and be consistent with the fact that you cannot be 1.5 without looking at this circular economy question very seriously.
Here, I think that's a very insightful and really good examples about some of the underlying conditions that you need to be able to make circularity reality in your company and with your clients. Since we're at the COP and we have a lot of ministers of environment and others around, you know, what are one or two things that you need to connect with other people on to help you achieve the kind of goals that you've set out for Suez to help with your clients?
I mentioned the regulation. I think it's very important that regulation, step by step, is giving a target to the company. The plastic regulation to be implemented in Europe is key, because you oblige the people using plastic in bottles, for example, to have recycled plastic. We have a JV with Leiden Basel, which is very performing. Suez is providing the good quality of the plastics through our sorting center, and Leiden Basel is putting on the market recycled polymer. It's very important that at one moment the regulation supports a long-term investment. You cannot invest as private company if you are just depending on all price variation on such things. So at one moment, we need to have a strong regulation. In France, the law in 2015 defined the end of some waste in landfill. I think I heard from Côte d'Ivoire as well that it's part of the transformation we need to implement. You have to educate the consumer. Consumer has to understand what's behind that. And when they choose a product, they need to see the difference. So at one moment, what they see on the shelf of the supermarket is very important for them to decide. And there is big competition on, and discussion at the UE level about what will be the score of the product. And I think the score is a very good initiative to help the consumer to choose. And step by step, you have many examples like that. You can challenge everyone. Of course, food waste will be one issue as well. So all the food process, we know the impact of the food inside the climate question, but we have as well the question of the food recycling. Of course, we need first to reuse the food to avoid the waste, and people are needed that. So you have initiative with NGOs and cities to collect food before it gets spoiled. And then you have to educate the people. And in France, you will have next year an obligation to valorize and have a separate collection for organics, and then to valorize that. So it's the next step. Of course, better to reuse, but after that, you valorize, and then you bring energy, or you go back to the soil, depending on the solution you want to push. So I think it's quite important, and as a citizen, I know that I have a special bin now for my organics, which will be different from the paper and the board, and for the general waste. And step by step, it's going to help us to understand what we are buying. And it's quite fascinating to see the volume change when you put aside the organic part to bring to your own compost, for example. If I take my example, the volume of the green of the gray bin, if I call it this way in France, it's quite diminishing very, very quickly as well. So it's regulation, it's citizen consumer behavior, and of course it's leadership by companies, and they pledge themselves, they have tools for that, and it's a global transformation we need to implement.
Excellent. I think that's exactly the kind of like tangible handshake moments that we need to create through discussions like this. Shika, you know, you're a researcher. You just got input from a leading company on this work, and from your position, you know, what would you say, given the timeline we've got to act on, you know, what do we have to do tomorrow versus what can wait for 10 years? And a question that always comes up that we like to stay close to researchers on is, how do we ensure that as we prioritize in circularity, we ensure that those solutions we're implementing are climate friendly? It'd be great to hear any insights on how you're prioritizing, and also how you recommend embedding those types of priorities in our actions.
So the short answer would be more research, but that's what we do. But I think looking at the sort of longer term commitments that we have ahead of us, right? And the finality of what those commitments are supposed to bring about is actually a really useful starting point, I think, for different companies as well as various other line ministries in governments, right? Because suddenly everyone is working together towards a unified target, which does require an overhaul of business as usual, you know, whether it is in clean technology or otherwise as well. So I think identifying what those sectoral targets are actually going to look like, and then recognizing what the opportunities a circular economy can create, or a circular approach can create, right? And it has to be pragmatic. You know, what are the business models? Who are the, you know, folks who can actually put in more money towards pilot demonstrations of the technologies that we already know? Can these be applied across different sectors? You know, what is the regulatory tweaking that's required? You know, should a blanket ban be put on dumping? You know, what are the sort of models that we can look at in terms of creating a second life of some of these technologies that are getting defunct? How do we start changing the norm for companies to start thinking about their products from design to disposal? So I think it's really about creating a much more cohesive narrative with the net zero conversation that we've got going on, in really hunkering down and thinking about, you know, what the sectoral approach, whether at a city level or at a national level or at a regional level, could look like. And I do think it will require a lot of those handshake moments that, you know, that you just alluded to, for something like that to be able to reap the benefits that it can.
Yeah, Gustave, if I come back to Côte d'Ivoire and your experience, You know, how do you translate all these different ideas into the next set of priorities? And, you know, one thing I even set up your previous comments with saying that 70 countries have incorporated circularity in the NDCs. The next question for me, at least, is how do you get it into the long-term strategies in real detail and specificity? So for you, what are the real priorities as we kind of move through these weeks and then after?
I can say is that in Côte d'Ivoire, we have a momentum for circular economy promotion. We have a political will. We have also political engagement. The regulations are already set up because we have a national decree on reuse of electric, electronic, and used tie, valorization. Also use motor oil revalorization. So on legislative area, this component is already set up. But what you need is to increase the partnership with the private sector because circular economy is already a component of the national economic development plan, and we sometimes a lack of financial means to boost the willing of the citizen to be moral or how do you call it, citoyen, if I can say that in French. So we have a lot of we want to emphasis of the collaboration, a partnership with private sectors. That's why we came here to boost partnership. We are looking for private sector who are already engaged in the circular economy promotion. And as I said, we are already member of the African Alliance for circular economy. So on political level, we have the setup, the mean we need, but what you need to do in Côte d'Ivoire, in West Africa, is to increase partnership with, private sector.
Yeah, we see that across the countries, that public-private dialogue. It doesn't matter whether I'm talking to a minister in the Netherlands or in Nigeria or Côte d'Ivoire, India. That's absolutely essential. It's an aligned next step with the private sector, specific industries, and specific government policies. Jessica, just to come back to you, you've heard a lot here. The New Climate Economy put out a report several years ago talking about the $26 trillion opportunity for climate action. I think your books with it from Accenture put out the $4.5 trillion opportunity with the circular economy. How do we start unlocking that level of funding? If I think about the scale of action now and the scale of the opportunity, there seems to still be a wide gap. What do we do to bridge the divide?
Well, there's many ways to do that, clearly, and many different paths that we could take. I think potentially one of the most obvious paths and easiest in some ways is to tackle the two bookends almost of our linear economy. So tackling on one end extraction, as was discussed by a few folks at the panel today. So extraction industry responsible for, I think, 53% of global emissions, and also an industry where we know, for example, we're spending, I think, just over $500 billion, so $500 billion on fossil fuel subsidies, right? So using that same funding to be able to, funnel into the transition toward a more circular economy. And at the same time, as was mentioned by one of the panelists, just with the example in India, just by moving it to a circular economy for example, extraction of rare earth minerals, of valuable metals, batteries, EV, and others, you could save, again, hundreds of billions of dollars in your own production and manufacturing processes. So definitely extraction on one end. And then on the other end of that linear economy, you could tackle waste and landfilling. So today we send about 2 billion tons of solid waste to landfills every year. I think it gets to 3.4 billion tons by 2050 are the current estimates. And a third of that waste is not even handled appropriately today. So again, we already know how insidious that landfill waste can be, and especially the methane that's produced in landfills. And we know how horrible it can be from an environmental and health perspective as well. And again, an area where we are spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year to literally throw away valuable materials. And this gets back to why circular economy is such an interesting opportunity, not just from an environmental and climate perspective, but also from a social perspective and an economic perspective, right? So if we tackle those two ends, extraction and landfilling, we literally get rid of them in some ways in a purely circular economy. We get rid of the negative externalities associated with those two processes, and we bring the value back into our systems, right? So keeping materials in play for as long as possible, essentially looping them over and over and over again, gets us to a point where we are using those materials which today are being wasted, and instead looping them back into our system, realizing that trillions and trillions of dollars of value, David, as you mentioned. So I think circular economy provides an opportunity for us to not just address that direct emissions impact that we're trying to tackle via our climate change discussions, but do so in a way that makes really, really good economic and business sense. And I think that part, the economy part of circular economy, is critical to ensuring that the new ways that we build back better are truly sustainable and will truly be around despite what happens with fluctuations in the economy.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to open it up to to a bit of discussion. We do have to end the session on the original schedule, even though we started late. So we have a short time for that. So while first I want to see if any of the panelists have a question for your other panelists. You're all experts, and here we are. No, with that, I'll let you think about it. And do we have any questions from the in-person participants or online through the chat room? If I can ask the coordinator to highlight those. All right, while they work on it, I'll ask my own. This is hybrid COP, right? First time hybrid COP. So mine is around decent work. You know, coming into this work on circular economy, I worked in international development mostly in low middle income, high growth countries, and even before that, doing business work there. There's a lot of discussion around net jobs numbers and net job growth around circularity, but it's a transition. So there's some people would say there's some winners, there's some losers. And, you know, does anyone want to share their reflections on how you're looking at jobs and circular economy? Including the informal sector and their role in either triggering or benefiting from this transition.
Well, please
go ahead.
Not linked to exactly to your question, but going back to the relationship between 1.5 degrees C and circular economy, and I am pleased. And as I already highlighted, our assessment report are really approved line by line, and mainly summary from policymakers are approved line by line by governments as well as scientists. I have just a paragraph that highlights the 1.5 in circular economy, and it says, because I should read it because it is approved word by word and line by. The special report 1.5 states that structural changes and recognition of economic activities in industrial clusters following the principle of circular economy improves the overall sustainability by reducing energy and waste. It also reinforces responsible production and consumption through recycling, water use efficiency, energy access, and ecosystem protection and restoration. This is something that came from something agreed between scientists and government. Related to your question about the creation of job, and this is why I said that it was really interesting. We did have a sort of own studies in this National Council, Socio-Economic and Environmental Council in Morocco. We translated the way to take circular economy as a tool in creation of job. And I think I'm happy to highlight that the numbers provided are really encouraging. And this is something, not only creation of job, also creation of wealth. And this is also something which is important. It is, in one word, this is creation, improving the well-being of citizens of Morocco. This is what I want to say.
To add on that, take the experience of Meknes, Morocco.
Yes.
Meknes, there was a dump site, so methane, and methane is one of the questions we all discussed today in Glasgow. And when you take a dump site into a landfill, engineered landfill at European standards, what's happening? In fact, you stop the methane emission, you transform the methane, you capture the methane, and then you put it in valorization in energy. You stop the leakage and you protect the water table. And then you had the question of the informal sector you just mentioned. And what we did at Meknes, with the support of the mayor, we create a cooperative for all the informal sector. Of course, we stopped to have kids on the landfill. And then we create a cooperative which gives proud to the people. When there was COP22 in Morocco, a lot of journalists went and to see what we did in Meknes. And the people, they introduced themselves as to be a chairman or the treasurer of the cooperative. They were not anymore the poorest guy of the city working on a dump site. So you give them as well a status. You give them tools to make their jobs, as we do in France. Okay, it's not an MIT job, but you give them equipment to be protected. And step by step, you put them back in the normal system, I would say. So it was very interesting for us because we had this climate impact, we have this water impact, we have this social impact, and at the end, what we provide, it's just a normal services. That's all Africa needs to have, and India, and so. And I was very pleased to hear here in Glasgow the question of methane and waste, because I hope it will provide money on this question. And if we can link methane coming from the dump site and money, then operator like Suez, Veolia can provide the solution. And then we will close the loop financially globally. So it's very important that this question of methane get a strong impact, because we can solve the waste question in emerging countries, which has a huge impact globally on the people, on the nature. So I would definitely follow that very carefully, because it's a strong feeling for me that with the methane question, we can change things.
Excellent, thanks for that. And so we're coming to our time, and I'm sorry that this ran a little bit late, but I would like to kind of turn back to anyone if you have any final remark, but I'll let you hold that, because just for a few minutes, I would like to welcome the video that we had from Minister Lenore Gewessler from Austria, which is now ready to play. So just a quick 3-minute video.
Thank you, Chairman. Distinguished delegates, I want to thank the Ministry of Environment of Côte d'Ivoire and UNIDO for their kind invitation to address you with this pre-recorded video statement to the side event, Accelerating Climate Action via Circular Economy. This event builds on the findings of the UNIDO Global Consultation on Circular Economy, which took place in Vienna from 10th to 12th of May 2021. And it was a great honor to serve, together with Her Excellency Ms. Andrea Mesa Murillo, Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, as co-chair of this important UNIDO initiative. One of the findings of these consultations was a common understanding that circular economy is clearly linked with the current global crisis, such as climate change, pollution, and the massive loss of biodiversity, and that circular economy can offer solutions for these global challenges. As the Circularity Gap report points out, the global economy is only 9% circular. Just 9% of the approximately 93 billion tons of minerals, fossil fuel, metals, and biomass that enter the economy are reused annually. And the Circularity Gap report states that circular economy strategies can cut global greenhouse gas emissions by 39% and help avoid climate breakdown. The potential of circular economy measures to contribute to climate targets and increase resilience to climate change is significant, but it is far from being recognized in the current climate discourse. To date, efforts to tackle the climate crisis have mostly focused on a transition to renewable energy, complemented by energy efficiency. These measures can reduce approximately 60% of emissions. Circular economy is a critical step forward in addressing the remaining 40% of global emissions associated with the production of materials and goods. The circular economy can contribute to complementing the picture of emissions reduction by transforming the way we make and use products. But what is circular economy? In my view, circular economy strategies aim to reduce the overall use of virgin raw material with three key circular strategies. First, circular design, reducing material consumption and using lower carbon alternatives. Second, optimizing the utility of products by maximizing their use and extending the lifetime. And third, enhanced recycling and using waste as a resource. So we urgently need to make our economy circular, and we have to ensure a transition towards a fossil-free and resource-efficient economy as soon as possible. Transformation is key in that regard, as it will embrace not only our economies, but also societies around the globe. UNIDO's initiative to hold global consultations on transformation towards a circular economy could not be more timely. The work of UNIDO to promote circular economy is of great importance to economic integration and cooperation at the national, regional, as well as the global level. The transition to a more circular economy requires the collaboration between governments, the investment community, industries, companies, academia, and civic organizations. International institutions can play a convening role in this. We need everybody to join efforts in a global transition to a climate-neutral, resource-efficient, and circular economy. A 1.5-degree world can only be a circular economy world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for tuning into the video. So if I just go back around for a quick 30-second final thoughts around the table. Gustav, would you have any final thoughts for us?
Well, I just want to thank UNIDO and to thank the organizer of this panel. What we want to say as final word is to help the developing country to use or to utilize the circular economy as a means to reach the target of 1.5. And what we expect coming in this COP is to mobilize a partnership with private sector, with civil society to help African country to be leader in to reach 1.5 degrees.
Yeah, Shika?
Thank you. I think given the sort of panel that I'm getting to share today, it will be really exciting to see how the circular economy approach catches mainstream attention in the way net zero did, right? 2 years ago, no one was really talking about net zero, and this year, that's all that any of us have spoken about. So I think if we can try and work towards a target of, maybe by next COP, it does become the buzzword, and we sort of start identifying the millions of opportunities really that exist in that narrative to solve for reaching 1.5. I think that would be a good day.
It's an excellent word of hope. And Abdallah?
Thank you very much. We are now at 1.5 degrees C as an anomaly. And I think, as it was already highlighted, we should make the trajectory circular. We should circulate our economy if we want to go back and to stay in the track of 1.5. I think this is also something, not only for this, but also to think about next generation, because it is not a choice, it is a necessity. This is what I want to say.
Excellent. Pierre?
Yes, I would just take the word of the minister, say 1.5 world is a 1.5 is a circular economy world. I think it's a very good summary, and the private company get a key role to play in that, and we are ready to do it.
Excellent. And Jessica?
Yeah, I agree with everything the rest of the panelists have said, and I'll just add on that, while we are far behind where we should be and we are off target, the good news is we actually know the answers, right? We have the solutions in front of us to put us back on target and to get the trajectory going in the direction it needs to go in for the world that we need. And circular economy solutions provide us with the model that helps us get to that future in a way that makes, again, good economic sense, environmental sense, and is good for society.
Excellent. So I want to thank all of you for being here and for your collaboration outside of this discussion. This is a small part of our relationships. And we look forward to helping you and those who've been able to participate here. So with that, thank you and best of luck in helping your hopes become reality. Thank you.